this Owen Barfield book, and he's trying to map out the medieval mind. And he was talking about how they very much thought about the zodiac. And when they looked at the sky, they could see what constellations they were in, and it all had a lot of meaning to
Yeah.
them as like an ordinary medieval person.
It seems like astrology has been like around as long as there's been humans.
And to be honest, anytime I see global spread of any idea, it's like an automatic trigger of there's something deeper going on.
Mhm.
Have you read any Barfield stuff? And this
Yeah.
one's Saving the Appearances. It's entirely about, at least in the beginning, it talks all about the difference between the proposition and the participatory
Is
knowing
that the one
kind of
where he talks
thing.
about beta thinking?
Oh yeah, yep.
Yeah. These different modes really do change like the world that we inhabit. The literate mind is a great example of this.
Literacy did something to us that is, it's hard to wrap your mind
Yeah.
around. I bet you literacy probably is the switch. Literacy is sort of that turning point of really being able to sort of dial up that thinking about thinking to an extreme level.
Yeah.
It killed the imagination, the imaginative, enchanted mind, enchanted
Mm.
world. I think something actually got
Yeah.
severed. It's making me think about your question about astrology, right? All of the zodiac stuff is pre-literate.
It's like you were part of the like I think it was probably much more of an immediate experience.
A lot of people get spooked about it, but I'm kind of with you on this. Like, I definitely think there's something way, way deeper about it. Ever since you contacted me last, I started paying attention to the moon. There was something like a connection of sorts of like intentionally tracking it
Yeah.
that I
Yeah,
thought was
man.
very interesting.
Yeah, I talk a lot about whether or not it's heretical and like whether or not this is okay for us to do, but at a more experiential level, it's like that's kind of what is most resonant with me when it comes to astrology is the fact that it's this connection to reality, being part of these rhythms. When I keep track of it and I say, oh, Mercury just moved into a new sign, let me think back to when Mercury entered the sign that it just left. Or let me think back to the last year, or like whenever it was last in this sign. When you do that for all the planets and stuff, like the time sense, like when you have bad time sense, it's like you're very in the moment. It's just one thing after
Hmm.
another, and you don't see it's kind of like constellating, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that is, I think, what it's meant as well. It's to be able to see the various points
Well,
of meaning through
and
time
it's
and
it's getting out of, you know, getting out of the headspace, man. And getting in contact with the
yeah.
the earth, the world, the
Hmm. And
the
when we,
bigger picture.
yeah, it's very sociological. I have kind of a Taoist bent.
How dare
And
you?
we talk about the present and the eternal now, because I think astrology, what it helps us do is expand the present moment.
Hmm.
When we encounter the present moment, um, you know, that can be a very fleeting moment when you say, "Oh man, what a beautiful sunset," and you continue on your walk or something, but there's a way where 10 years in either direction from now, thinking linearly, like to have your now be larger,
Hmm.
it creates this interesting effect of peaceful connection or something like that. That's what's really up when it comes to astrology in my own life. It's like oftentimes I'm not very connected. Like oftentimes I'll wake up and I'll see what's the astrology for that day, and then I go to sleep and then I do it the next day. But
Right.
as you can see these larger cycles, there's this profound sense of like peace or something like that for me.
Hmm.
It's like when I can really get a large sense, I don't know, it's just there's a connecting with reality that I do think is a very deep thing.
I think it's an interesting idea to try and expand your present moment,
Yeah.
temporarily expand your present moment. Like, I never even thought of that. I mean, I think I'd have to be quite intentional about it. I could conceptualize it, but to actually
Hmm.
experience something like that, I think would be
Yeah.
fairly profound.
Yeah, man. Yeah, this is like why I continue to be interested in this despite all of the, side eyes that I get because of it. It's because I can't deny that in the times where I feel like I have a good relationship with astrology, something feels inherently correct.
It's very clear, at least from scripture. Like, man, they're
Yeah.
looking at the stars and the planet and the moon all the time.
I think astrology was just baked into humanity. And I really think that when in those moments, where you can hold all the planets in mind or something and see where they all where the myth, and you can understand the astrological transits tell stories, right? And it's like these stories and these
Hmm.
vast interconnected stories. It's like
There's these hooks into like the deepest aspects of mythological concepts.
it all reveals
This grand super story.
the divine pattern.
It's just another tool to help you get in that rapport with the nature of God.
Yeah, it reveals the pattern of patterns.
Martin Shaw, he says, I want a pocket full of stories, you know. I want a pocket full of stories too,
Yeah,
man.
without seeing through astrology to what is beyond astrology, it kind of falls on its ass, and like it becomes modern astrology where it's all like,
Yeah, yeah.
you
Well, in
know,
modern astrology, I think it actually lost a lot of what it's good for.
yeah. And I wonder about why it was deemed heretical.
Hmm.
Perhaps because the idea of pagan astrology was just so potent in our mind that we couldn't see how Christ reorders the gods and you know, the
I
glory
could
of.
see that. I could see people being just extremely fearful.
I do think there's something dangerous about it, where if we forget the, reordering of things, like if I'm looking at this astrology wheel on my screen right now, right? And so I have these different, you could think about them as sub-personalities or gods, internal gods, like there's all this circling around. There's a danger in that because like let's say I get particularly interested in Mars or something, it's kind of like I'm summoning that.
God.
This is where I get curious about connection between Christ and the sun. Something about like the constancy of the sun compared with all the other planets, which are kind of, they wobble and stuff like this. But the sun is this constant thing all throughout the year in the zodiac.
I would imagine that the sun is the core of all of it.
The thing with astrology is that it's geocentric. However, here in our modern day, we know that the sun is at the center, right?
Well, that's what we
From a certain
believe.
point of view.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if perhaps this coming back around of participation has to do with maybe like a bifocal vision of geocentric and heliocentric or something.
I'm trying to separate it from the modern cartoon of what it is.
I
I
don't know,
don't know.
man.
I have no idea. I have no
Yeah,
idea.
I don't know. Well, point being,
Yeah.
stop writing off astrology, people. It's like, give it some thought. Maybe when
Yeah.
you look at it, how can you not be fascinated by this ancient and like,
Start with the
uh,
moon. Just start with the moon.
yeah,
Just look
yeah,
at it.
start with the moon,
Just look
the
at it. Look
planetary.
at it.
And as you move through the celestial spheres, you gain this more comprehensive and rich experience of the present moment. And that is when your world will shine and sparkle with uh, the spiritual patterns that are like the patterns, because when you can see the patterns, it's like Peugeot, what he's trying to do is he's trying to get you to be able to read the patterns.
Mm-hmm.
And because
Well,
then you
yeah.
can dance with the patterns then. And that's what it's all about, in my opinion, because there's nothing more glorious than dancing with, God. And yeah.
I I like it. I'm
Nice.
I'll research it some more. I'll put it on
Cool,
my
cool.
I'll take a wave on that for sure.
Cool, cool, cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. At the beginning, we were talking about Peugeot. This is a good example of time sense, right? How
Mm-hmm.
we're looking back and we're connecting the present, and like it creates this. Now we're resonating more deeply in the present or something.